And joining us now, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, Democrat of Texas, for the latest on the COVID vaccine and some of the other big issues on Capitol Hill. Congresswoman, thanks very much for being with us. I just want to ask first, we just were talking to Dr. Brownstein about the vaccines. You're representing Houston. Yesterday, Governor Abbott, says he's lifting the mask mandate. So what do you make of that? What are you telling your constituents about these measures?
Well, let me thank you so very much for having me, Terry and Diane. You can see I'm on the move, trying to get back to my district in the midst of threats that were here in Washington, D.C. You can imagine how stunned I was when, without consultation with members of Congress, without any consultation with the mayors and county judges, those are the officers of elected officials that have been on the front line trying to get people originally tested. We were behind in Texas in terms of our testing. We were behind as it relates to population as it relates to our vaccinations. The governor did not have a protocol that reached hard to serve areas, minorities of African-American heritage, Hispanic heritage, who were hit hardest by COVID-19. We're absolutely dumbfounded by this irreverent, erratic, and senseless order that he has given. Now, I'm going to be working with the Biden administration. I think there has to be a stronger response. We thank them very much for calling it Neanderthal, but people are going to be hurt. There are going to be more people dying, more people hospitalized, more people who are, in essence, subject to the various mutants that have now come about in the state of Texas. We understand through the scientists that we have all of the mutants in the state of Texas. And so I'm asking the governor, what is his response? I talked to my mayor this morning. I've talked to other individuals, and I would say to you that we are at the low ebb of vaccinations. We're not where we need to be. So by next week, we will have teeming nightclubs. We'll have restaurants with people there of goodwill, taking their families out or whatever, maybe feeling this is a great thing that's happening, without masks, have not been tested, have not been vaccinated, and creating a massive community spread. This is not hyperventilating. This is not exaggerating. This is based on science, based on the Centers for Disease Control. And when we're trying to open our schools, this is no time to promote and give credence and support to community spread. So I don't think the governor should be conducting these vaccinations. We should have it under control of the government because he's not doing his job. It's a shame to have to say that our Texas electric grid failed, and now we're failing in fighting COVID-19. I am absolutely stunned of that order.
Now, Congresswoman, last night the House passed another major piece of legislation expanding voting rights and reforming campaign finance laws. How do you think this will make voting more equitable?
Oh, I think this will be powerful as relates to the idea of voting empowerment, and that is same-day registration. That is more days to be able to vote within the law, of course. That is to deny oppressive actions by state governments. That is to provide more resources for our voting apparatus, to have oversight, and to make sure that we don't have the intimidation that we saw in former President Trump's CPAC speech, which said there should only be one day of voting, knowing that it will undermine the empowerment of African-American voters and Hispanic voters and young voters. So this legislation is guided by the law. It is doing nothing outside of the law. It is only seeking to empower voting, and it will be a complement to the John Robert Lewis Voter Enhancement Act that will fix the very bad decision that was made by the Supreme Court that undermined the 1965 Voting Rights Act. So we're looking not to do anything but to allow voters to be able to vote as freely, honestly, and legally as possible.
And you'd think that in a democracy, getting as many people to vote as possible would be part of the point. But let me turn to another major piece of legislation, the George Floyd police reform bill, banning controversial police tactics, easing the way for lawsuits against officers who have violated suspects' constitutional rights. This has been such a pressing issue. It lit this country up in so many ways last year. You think this bill is going to make a big practical difference in policing on the streets?
It's very important to put a human face on this legislation. And many of us call the names of so many, from the heinous 8 minutes and 46 seconds of the murder of George Floyd. And I spent a lot of time with his family, who most people would think would be embittered, but they have utilized themselves to go around the country encouraging people to vote, encouraging people to interact peacefully with the police. It's been amazing. We spent time with them yesterday evening. But Breonna Taylor's family and Tamir Rice's family and Walter Scott, that bill is a mainstream effort to enhance the relationships between police and community. I think the police and those who were exaggerating so excessively on the floor last night, our Republican friends, should look at the amount of resources we give to reimagine policing, to give police officers the opportunity for enhanced education, accreditation, training as it relates to excessive force, training on the duty to intervene. I would love to get those additional dollars to be able to reimagine my police force. I don't know if anybody realizes there are 18,000 police forces in the United States, too many, because they would do well to collaborate and combine with many of the surrounding departments to get them more resources, but they are there. And so if there's one department, one person department, that person will have the opportunity to get resources to reimagine policing out of this legislation. And then it will give victims and police officers rights, because it will hold everyone accountable, because it'll allow everyone to enter into the courthouse fairly, because before, only the police officer could go into a court and be ruled not guilty, if you will. The poor victim never got a chance to explain their case. I think this is an opportunity for new, young, bright officers who are coming in with college degrees, and those who are in leadership, and of course our senior officers, to find a new, bright opportunity to serve their communities. We're going to pass the George Floyd in the United States Senate, and we're going to get it signed as well. So we're going to really make a difference in what we're doing, and it is going to be one that the nation is going to be able to be very proud of, because we did not do this alone. We did this in speaking to those who are Republicans and Democrats. You know, Terry, I want to say this. After George Floyd, those who were protesting peacefully were not Black, they were not Hispanic, they were not Asian, they were not Anglo or Caucasian. They were everyone. They were doing it in New Zealand, in London, in Paris, on the continent of Africa. They were doing it in South and Central America. They felt so much pain, and they had such hope in the democracy that they call the United States of America, that they thought if they could be seen and heard wanting a change, it would impact us. It has impacted us, and it's impacted these families who still mourn about the loss of their loved one. Not that because people don't pass away or die. That happens in our families. But when it comes to COVID-19, that you look to see how did this happen, these actions with Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and others, families look and say, how did this happen? Why did my child have to die at this level of violence from the government? That's very different from what happens if you are encountering violence, and we know that happens. We look to our police officers for safety and security. So I believe this is going to enhance our service to the nation.
All right. Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee on that bill and on a robust agenda in the House of Representatives. Thanks very much for being with us.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.